Now, in my opinion, the only man who can get away with wearing a beret since the Thelonious Monk, Mike G.
What a beautiful spring day it was. Spring-like. I guess the first day isn't coming yet. At least everything was going fine until I invited the 10-year-old neighbor girl to imagine a world without money. She gave me a cold, sneering, adult look. She snarled, "You'll have to pry the goddamn money out of my cold, dead, goddamn white hands." Like Socrates, all we can do is try. I'd like to read a poem about happier times to cheer me up, not the one about the sun being an antiseptic that doesn't work, or the moon being a rotten tooth on Sunday and no dentist open. Or the lover entering the restroom and never coming out, obviously transported to a when and where without me. Or the always kind dog suddenly snarling to bite your face off, or God in her heaven with a sticky note for me that says, "Forget it, kid." In other news, you can't trade lives without trading minds. I wouldn't trade mine for the moons. Regards, 10-year-old neighbor girl. In other news, I nearly wept with compassion while ushering Blue Man Group. Though these courageous young men who willingly paint themselves blue clearly have some screws loose. They did good job, good effort, staring creepily at audience and banging on things and being blue. I love them, poor fucking things. By the way, it's not easy to stare creepily into other human beings' eyes for a long time. They've labored their entire lives to acquire that skill and deserve one of my homemade good job, good effort trophies. My trophies are the aesthetic equivalent of the Charlie Brown Christmas tree. In other news, I've lost zero affection for the fragmented memories of childhood, magic toy box with some spiders and rancid fruitcake thrown in for balance. Amid ventriloquist dolls and Lincoln logs, the stars look the same to me now as then. The voices of the long dead are there, hacking and laughing like life. Mom looks hot. She's 21 with long dark hair. I Rembrandted the walls with crayons as my kid sister slept pissed in the kitchen. Baseball cards strewn like the poems of now on floor, and bees poking through moist ceiling while little brother wailing in the crib. Original erotic stimulation or relief from loneliness, and gobs of lovers on TV to choose from. In other news, I went on a blind date. As she gloomily explained the essentials of her doctoral dissertation, anxieties of the phallus in Elizabethan drama, my own phallus shrunk to tiny mushroom cap. My poor intestines gurgled, and I apologized for just remembering I'm too ill to date. In other news, for giving cigarettes to children, the health Nazis stabbed her with carrots. Then they take a stretch break and bring in a speaker to do a super fun icebreaker activity. In other news, our marriage was doomed as it lapsed into routine, but so was that Andromeda star on Supernova Eve. So we lapsed into grand celestial company. You see, we didn't fail, we simply evolved like the star, became necessarily defunct like Napster and Netscape. All things die, God and evolution included. In other news, a nicotine boost changed the universe to evening. My parents are alive and thinking what they think, and 4 happy beers in, I declare myself a proud uncle to the younger ones who share some genetic light. Olive the ocean whore reminded me of goodness. Her greatness sojourns port to port as mine does scribble to scribble. It's odd to be an animal who has become a god, and tonight I choose to love everyone as the holy mushroom once instructed. There's the issue of my ding-a-ling to consider, but I leave it alone for now because I'm public, like Orion materializing in the western night is public. The trees, leaves, and sidewalk cracks are also light, and psilocybin goggles allow me to read their scripture. After jerking me off, my teacher said I'd get it eventually. I see what she means. I see what she means. In other news, at Mardi Gras, Carnivorous butterflies exist, eating the fingers of little girls. What a world, what a world. In other news, the statue of the Golden Boy was claimed by the lake one day when no one noticed, and of course no one cared because no one believed anymore. Don't know, don't care was everyone's response, and all night the drunk guy finished our thoughts, which were drunk thoughts anyway, so none of us cared. The art is personal. The audience makes it cosmic. God makes it comic. Her laugh is what some call the Big Bang. She only laughed once. What a laugh it was. In other news, she targeted everyone with her uncomplicated kindness, including Jesus the Idea, who did her no favors lately. But as a girl inspired her to make crucifixion cookies. Her mother ate one and turned into a mother of salt. Small animals and children licked on her for 3 years. Then mother turned back into a naked flesh mother again, but this time with a first-rate brain and kindness like God. The other kids said this was all so much magic realism, but refused to eat the crucifixion cookies when offered. Little Mary had rare guts, ate one, became a salt lick. She did not return to naked flesh again 3 years later. Why? Because the author just entered a midlife crisis. In other news, of course we're still in hell with carnivorous caterpillars and pissed off Girl Scouts, and they've deleted rainbows, but we still gotta be kind. It's a game, but it's also real. Eating enervates me too. It's what we do once our invisible work is done. Our work is taking us to an extreme place, extending consciousness to slugs, and as far down the phylogenetic realm as the quasars are macrocosmically far. We simply do what poetry says, and the risk is clear from the list of poets' suicides. We refuse the cure, we refuse to believe that we're sick, and eating can wait, because the slugs are singing, and we've tuned our ears to hear. She was a firefly who exploded from too much light. I'm still wearing her little bracelet with the green turtles, the one she gave me as a sign that she would not explode. She exploded. Still, I wear the bracelet. I am psychologically blocked from taking it off, so I write a poem so I can return to time. Poetry is what I do when I'm blocked from love. I and my tribe mates are children of ecstasy and sadness. No use complaining or wishing it were different. Genetic and spiritual material passes into us, binds us to selected destinies without consent. She was a good firefly, a very good firefly, easy on the eyes and bright as a sun. And she could kiss, and she could sing. And I can't move from the here and the her of the poem. I'm looking at the bracelet with little green turtles. I'm looking at the bracelet with little green turtles. I'm looking. In other news, my grandma used to say, cheer up. She thought this worked on glum people. She really did. Nearly all of my loves are characteristically glum. When I tell them to cheer up, the only person it helps is me, temporarily. So cheer up, everybody. Hurry up and cheer up, please. Finally, guess there's nothing we can do for the endangered poor poets except maybe say a little prayer, or read one of their poems, or talk about how inspiring they were as we watched them drown. Dennis can't be here tonight. Our friend Dennis McBride, he asked me to read a short poem for him, so I will. It's called Advice. Dennis McBride. Do not be here now. Now and here is the most dangerous place you can be, because that is where your experience happens to you. Be anywhere but there, anywhere but here now. Even be cautious of there, then. Just be someplace else, any place, anywhere else but here and now. Anywhere that is not nearby to here and now, that is far, far away from where you are now, here, where our theological psychologies are feeding our emergency monsters. Go behind the moon, beyond the sky. Go at night when the dancing man in the dark stops by your bed to take you walking, and you walk together into the steepness of shadows, down the paths of the mist world, into the soft, safe, dark heart of the forest, or hide in an adjacent star system like Peoria, Illinois, or Austin, Texas, or some other labs that are conducting double-blind studies. Just be any place where you can have experiences before you have them, or after you have them, where you don't have them to have your experiences where you have them. That is, unless you have been graced with a very limited imagination or a weak grasp of event, or in a kind of walking or waking coma. And when your dad and the coach throws you the dumb, inert basket, foot, or baseball and gives you the flag and the gun to protect it with, that they got at the multi-level marketing meeting, put the gun and the flag in the garbage can on your way out the door to your mental illness appointment, which you should be very late for, late enough really so you don't have to even be there. That's Dennis. Thanks.
We're going to hear from one more open mic reader before I introduce our feature, and that reader is Ian King.
This is from an unpublished, uncirculated little chapbook that I was working on called Oktoberfest, and they're a collection of Tanka poems. Tankas are like haikus. Haikus are the famous 575 poems, but Tankas have they're 575 with 2 more sevens at the end, like a little tail. And I kind of like that because I usually have a little more to say than a haiku. Haikus are a little, they leave me wanting more to write. So I've been writing the Tanka poems for about 8 or 9 months now, and these are from September, October, November, and December of last year. I'll just read some of them. But the other thing about the Tanka poem and the haiku as well is it's a Japanese form, and so in Japan they want you to be more strict to the syllables and to the structure of the poem. But when they get translated into English or in other languages, then the syllabical structure kind of gets screwed up. And so the basic form becomes not 575, but short, long, short. And so I try to put the short, long, short, long, long in these poems. First one is, that coffee you left for me in the bottom of the pot this morning, I heated in the microwave. I left half a cup for you too. We sold them chemical weapons, but we never expected them to use them on their own people, women and children, entire families. Yellow sunflowers stand tall against the fence, entangled in one another, against weathered wood, dark green stalks. I see a series of poems in these sunflowers, towering over black-eyed Susans, August's bounty. Sunflowers stare their young black eyes with grief up at the gray clouds in southwest Washington, expecting rain. As summer comes to an end, the sunflowers watch the children go back and forth to school, see who's in their class this year. Does the president know what's going on as he speaks to an empty crowd from the Lincoln Memorial, tapping every phone in town? On the anniversary of Dr. King's dream speech, the crowd gathered at the National Mall is so small, must be the rain. Watching my daughter take the cross and shoot the ball at practice, summer's over. It's finally time for soccer. She walks around barefoot while splashing through rain puddles in early September, hunting for salamanders. When the kids are outside making all that noise, I don't worry, I don't check. It's when the noise stops. One kid's down, broke his thumb while crashing on his bicycle, and now all the kids have gone home. Driving home from church at night with the kids in the back, the full harvest moon lighting our way. This bright moon I see tonight high up in the sky is the same you see 300 miles away. Might as well be 3,000 miles away. The moon sings to me her sorrowful songs as she watches man relive his miseries over and over once more again. Is this thing we call a soul an illusion perpetuated by man's instincts for companionship and love? Wondered the man in the moon. Do ghosts live on the moon, haunting the night skies with howling winds? My son would rather practice the game of chess than watch the full moon disappear behind the clouds, disappear behind the clouds. The harvest moon is indifferent to the suffering going on in Vancouver, Washington, where plots are hatching to ship coal all across the world. The moon is as cold as an ice storm in a cemetery, its terrifying beauty capitalizing on our nightmares, a scream in a silent film. The full moon I see has a pale glow, but that same moon you see is pumpkin orange, obscured by the smoke from the wildfires. If string theory is correct, there is a full moon high up in the sky in an alternate universe that's made of actual cheese. When Andy Warhol met Pablo Picasso at Lily's Gourmet and Catering, it was decided to name all their sandwiches after dead artists. There's so much death everywhere. Baby birds, feathers strewn about the end of summer is a sort of death too. Dog looks suspicious. Dog looks nervous. He knows it's going to be his fault. Whatever it was the cat did, it seems it's always his fault. Baby bird feathers scattered about the house, upstairs, downstairs. The corpse quietly lays while the cat is nowhere to be found. I know why no one is talking about the 12 murdered this last week in Washington, D.C., because summer is coming to an end too. Pulling weeds from the church parking lot on a Saturday morning is a lot like sitting in the pews on a Sunday morning. Good, moist soil works best for pulling weeds in southwest Washington, but sometimes you have to use your finger to dig out the root. The flower girl at the grocery store arranging autumn mums was far lovelier. Price of chicken at $2.49 a pound is not something to kill yourself over, he tells himself, walking past the quarts of gin. They are now selling booze in the grocery store. Such an easy way to exit stage left. Coming back from the grocery store as the rain taps on his windshield, he wonders, has anyone ever killed themselves to this song? Sometimes it just seems like such a simple solution to all his problems, to end it all so easily. Who would know? All right, a couple more. My father, getting older, celebrates Thanksgiving in a hospital bed with a turkey sandwich I bring him. These roles we play as actors, from son and brother to husband and father and grandfather, it's all acting. But what becomes of it all? One proven cure for a seasonal affective disorder is shopping at the mall with credit cards or listening to Cuban jazz. This longest night of the year will not be the darkest, as it is filled with the laughter of children and the music of Cuba. My son plays with the train set, making loops around our Christmas tree. His Lego characters acting out the Polar Express. Born in a manger, suited for donkeys and sheep, the angels appeared to the shepherds in the field. A strange way to save the world. That's it. Thanks, guys.
Joyce Fiona Coulson was born in 1948 and has spent most of her life writing. She started writing at age 12 and hasn't stopped since. She writes mostly poetry, short stories, and satire, although she has also written nonfiction, 4 novels, and 1 radio play. Joyce owns her own publishing company, Eclectic Publishing, and is otherwise semi-retired. That's the bio. Those of us that have been coming for a while also know that we are, moved and entertained, and I personally appreciate her service to the poetry community through the open mic at Paper Tiger, which she did not start, but which many people missed when it went away for a while. So it's nice to have it back there again. And our friends, always nice to hear from her, Joyce Coulson.
Thank you, Chris, for letting me be featured tonight. That's a poem. I'm going to start with my shameless plug, as I always do. Next Wednesday, of course, as Chris referred to, is the open mic poetry at Paper Tiger Coffee Roasters. And we're going to have a 17-year-old poet named CJ, at least that's the letters he goes by. He used to be known as Connor, now he's going by CJ. Anyway, he's a fantastic poet. He writes great poetry, so come on down and listen to the youth share their poetry. I'm going to start tonight with my very first poem that I ever wrote. Back in 1972, that's a long time ago. It's a takeoff of Shakespeare, and it's called Love Sonnet Revised for the 20th Century. And I always was asking, why did Shakespeare really write love sonnets? I mean, why did he really write sonnets? So this answers that question in Shakespeare form. Wilt thou, whose will fulfill in full will, fulfill the darling buds of all my heart's desire? Sweetly burns my need to swill about thy charms before my life departs. A flooding flow my dreams do go, in pains to see and want thy acquiescence now. As much the cankered fragrant flower stains the field, burning urge as well endows a happy plight. The jewels shining bright in endless night will not surpass thy kiss. I beg thee, flaming loud like sun but glare light, the only thing I plead for now is this: quench my thirst like grass from the morning dew, tender loving moment, and a good screw.
You've always been like this.
This next poem I'm going to read is one that was my tribute to artists everywhere, poets and sculptors and painters, called Art Thou. The delicate artist seeks the brushstroke, like partaking in exotic rhyme with a rhythm twist. The canvas edge ends where the imagination dances like wild abandon to the nurtured tune. Creating the inner harmony heals the painter, the sculptor, the poet, the musician. We're all artists, turning our ecstasy inside out when we rediscover our silence. And this next one was my first attempt at a humorous poem all the way through. It's called Freudian Slip. Have you ever wondered what a Freudian slip might look like as an article of clothing? She says it's white with a frill at the back. He sees a slit of spite with a view of the black. She wears it for her demure, smiling with confidence. The reflection in the mirror sees a brazen lack of innocence. He declares love is not lost in the eye of the slip. She denies the real cost lies in the plot of the rib. She insists it's white, her cheeks glow like a rose. His fantasy takes flight to imagine such a Freudian close. This next one was my first attempt at being political, called Hunting Season. Projected trajectory, velocity, scope, and downwind factor. The graceful snapshot, proud antlers, sensitive nose, velvet brown coat. Hold the breath, light finger pressure on the trigger, slow and constant. Startled eyes, fleecy tough tail, hooves poised in flight, pulsing warm furry chest. The trigger pressure on the bolt. Memories, the cold mountain stream, the drink with the doe, the delirious mating chase in the woods, the wobbled-legged fawn, the bolt pressure on the firing pin. How sweet, he'll grow up to be a big, strong buck just like his bang! And I'm proud of this one because I won a $100 prize, third prize in a poetry contest with this poem. So that made me feel pretty good. It's called Photograph of a Thunderstorm. Mountains stand, pointing their fingers, piercing the sky, bleeding red twilight, and purpled watch the dying day die. Van Gogh clouds tumble their blinding lightning ramble, piercing pregnant raindrops, bleeding thunderous echoes, and graying, crying the night into birth. The camera flashes into the poignant eye, piercing the dying day, blinding the turbulent night, and blackly echoes nature's rumble of images. Mountains stand, smiling their fingers, piercing the sky, developing the awe, the reverence, and lightly printing the 4x6 of God. Okay, now comes the fun part, I think. For those who don't know, I'm going to come out tonight to the poetry crowd. I'm a transsexual woman. I was married for 32 years to the love of my life. She was wonderful in every way. And when she passed away from cancer in 2005, I wrote this poem. It's the only poem I wrote in 2005 because of circumstances. And it was read at her eulogy. It's called Exit. She is not the body. She is its shepherd. She is not the box. She is the light within. She is the giver, the thoughtful, the caring, the loving. She is forever with God. She is the eye of the needle which threads the love all our hearts share. She is the living, leading with bon voyage. For us, the dying, we say goodbye. And I wrote this recently. This is basically an autobiographical poem about me. It's called From Him and Her to Him to Her. I love being a female. I dislike being born male. I abhorred the path of testosterone. I lived through a childhood with fantasies. I believed fairy tales were just that, fairy tales that would never come true. And then a fairy tale walked into my life, and once upon a time took new meaning, and my childhood fantasies were substituted. I discovered that once upon a time existed in the form of angels on earth. An angel entered my happily ever after. I could stow away my childhood fantasies. I could forget for a moment doom and gloom. I got married to the angel and sent to me from heaven. However, I found that happily ever after is not ever nor even after. When after comes, becomes cancer's shadow. Once upon a time in a land far, far away, an angel granted my fondest wish, that I find love to replace my disappointment. How was I to know at the time that disappointment was easily replaced with grief? When cancer struck its blow, it struck my heart. My angel returned to that heavenly body we hopefully call heaven if not hell, because the difference is the grief of a broken heart. And so to live without her, I tested it all off. It was those carefully preserved fantasies, the fantasies so long imprisoned by the self. I discovered that if the fairy tale of a loving angel can exist in my happily ever after, then why couldn't my true identity live that way? I reached out to the therapy and self-contemplation, and this therapist was my Merlin of the fairy tale. He waved his wand and I was abracadabra'd. Now I do indeed live happily ever after, finding myself going from him and her to him to her. I am me at last, a princess born from the knight in shining armor. Yes, I was born from the knight in shining armor. That birth has made me thankful to the angel, an angel who taught me the truth of being female. The wisdom of old age has taught me magic. It has taught me that magic comes from the heart, that the heart is the magician of happily ever after, that happily ever after doesn't have to be just once upon a time or in a land far, far away. No, it can also be the magic of living true to yourself. And this poem I'm going to read now, I wrote back in 2009 and I revised it today because I felt it needed a little tweaking. How many poets don't tweak their poems later on? This is a love poem that I wrote to my wife back in 2009, called Rose Garden. When I touched you, the light in my eyes, like the breath of roses, grew inside me, and the realization, as if petals were kindred souls, bloomed my beating heart and scented my fingers. Memory lives forever. I love forever. Flower heart, heart of flowers, soul of blooms. I love forever. The lightning flashed, the desire struck, the flashing desire lit my way into your soul. Because never is like thorns on the breath of roses, sinking their hooks into my fragile anxiety. Should I never love you, would be because you never were. Memory lives forever. I love forever, flower heart, heart of flowers. Soul of blooms, I love forever. I was the rose garden, where you tilled the soil of my destitution, where you nurtured the earth in my lost soul, where you wrought blooms from nothing and kissed me with your breath of roses. This next one was an experiment on my part to make the perfect poem. So much for that. It's arranged in a way that I seldom do. I usually don't do this kind of poetry, but it was, like I say, an effort to make a perfect poem. It's called The Elixir of Love. Love is the elixir. Love is the cure. We shall toast each other, and promises will be made. The dark and the rising sun falls away into the hearts of those who seek the elixir of love. The light of the setting sun rises always into the hearts of those who seek the cure of love. We shall toast each other, and promises will be kept. Drink the elixir of love, receive the cure of love. And this one is another romantic poem called Rocky Road Romance. Shows you how close food and romance can be. You have marshmallow eyes, soft through light in yonder window of my soul. The raisins, my hope, is in the taste of romance we know. But the chocolate truth of the rocky road we gloriously hoe lies in nuance, rests in flavors, dreams in the aromas of the love where we go. I'm going to close with something completely different. Now, Chris, you did say this was uncensored.
For about 10 years, yes. No worries there.
I've been experimenting lately with a pen name. Julie suggested I at least have one pen name. She has so many.
It's not my fault.
So I chose the pen name Fiona Fantasia, and her first book is available during break if you would like to buy it, called Adults Only. A title like that, you know. My pen name is Fiona Fantasia, so I took my middle name and it tied in nicely with Fantasia. So, cover your ears if you don't like uncensored poetry. This is called Circus Acts. At the carnival, I rode the ferry wheel and saw the licentious jump through draws, while the ringmaster raised his high hopes on the twat rope dancer. It was under the lusty big top, and nudity of it all was the delicate smell of sensuous popcorn and the taste of forbidden cotton candy. The fat lady sang, but the undulating body didn't end her sexy song. No, the clowns were all named Jack Off, and they were funny on top of their balls, balancing their act like a sex-starved man. Yes, at the carnival, this three-ring circus is entertaining, if not filling. So before they take off the tents and pack up the porn train, let's all give a round of erotic gasps as the elephant shows off his real talent. That's all I have.
So Angelo made it through 10 years without being traumatized, and I think you just ruined him. My son is ruined. I can see the fear in his eyes. Okay, we're going to take a 15-minute break. Joyce has several books for sale. You can buy some coffee, and there are also a lot of other wonderful books here to buy. We'll get back together in about 15 minutes for more open mic. There are still cookies, as far as I know, including Girl Scout cookies.